Stone Age superfood that grew human brains, would you eat it? Imagine this. You're standing barefoot in a dense, steaming forest 2 million years ago. You're starving. Suddenly, your tribe's forager returns, holding a cracked skull, dripping with thick, fatty brain matter. Everyone gathers. No fire, no tools, just raw, greasy brain handed to you. What do? Would you eat it? Modern science says this disgusting, primal snack may have supercharged human evolution. But how, and could you stomach the truth behind the food that may have built your brain? Why did the human brain grow so fast, so big, so suddenly, 2 million years ago? Our ancestors, small, upright, and still more ape than man, walked the African savanna. Then something changed. Over a relatively short period in evolutionary terms, their brains tripled in size, not doubled, tripled. That's not normal. For decades, scientists blamed it on tools, fire, or hunting, but those things came later. The brain growth started before any of that. So what kickstarted it? A growing number of anthropologists point to something both shocking and strangely logical: fat. More specifically, fatty acids like DHA and AA, essential nutrients that build the brain's gray matter and neural connections. These nutrients aren't found in abundance in plants or muscle meat, but they are super concentrated in certain unexpected places: bone marrow, animal organs, and brains. Yes, brains. As horrific as it might sound to our modern stomachs, these ancient superfoods may have been our first evolutionary advantage. Early hominins didn't need to invent weapons to get them. They were scavengers, not hunters. And after a predator killed its prey and ate the muscles, guess what was left behind? Bones, skulls, marrow, brain. That leftover mess? That's where the real gold was hiding. These remains were nutrient jackpots, soft enough to smash open with primitive rocks, and rich in brain-building compounds. And for a creature whose survival depended on sharper thinking, quicker decisions, and better memory, those fatty, disgusting scraps may have been the key to human evolution. But how do we know this? What evidence proves early humans even ate these parts? That's what we'll uncover next. For years, the idea of ancient humans cracking skulls for brain meat sounded like science fiction, or at least sensational guessing. But then the evidence started piling up, across sites in East Africa like Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania and Kubi Fora in Kenya. Archaeologists uncovered bones that told a different story. These weren't just leftovers from lion kills. These bones had human fingerprints, quite literally. Fossils from around 2.5 million years ago show precise percussion marks, small fractures that line up with the shape of primitive stone tools. These weren't random breaks. They were purposeful strikes aimed at very specific spots: the ends of long bones, where marrow lives, and the thin bone behind the eye sockets, which offers direct access to the brain. Now imagine this: a group of early Homo habilis huddled around a half-eaten zebra carcass. The lions have moved on, the scavengers moving. One of them, small, weary, clever, picks up a sharp-edged rock. Instead of chewing meat from the bones, he targets the skull. A few well-aimed blows, and a splash of hot, fatty tissue drips out, nutrient-rich, high in calories, soft enough for toothless mouths, perfect for children or elders. The scene didn't happen once. It happened again and again, across hundreds of generations, enough to leave a pattern. And that pattern is now carved into fossilized bones across prehistoric Africa. What's even more fascinating, these brain-boosting feasts may have predated cooking. No fire, no roast, just raw, fatty fuel. And the more these early humans ate it, the smarter and more dominant they became. That raises another question: were they really scavengers, or something more strategic? Did they know these organs held power, even before science proved it? Fast forward to today, and the very things our ancestors instinctively consumed, bone, marrow, and brain tissue, are now being studied in labs. And guess what? The science backs them up. Let's start with the brain itself. Animal brains are rich in DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, an omega-3 fatty acid critical for brain growth and cognitive function. It's one of the major structural fats in the human cerebral cortex. Without enough DHA, our brains simply can't function at full capacity. Here's the wild part: Your body doesn't produce much DHA on its own. It has to come from your diet. Guess what else contains DHA and other neural-building fats? Bone marrow, the soft, fatty tissue inside bones, is packed with calories, healthy cholesterol, and micronutrients vital for survival and brain health. In fact, some researchers argue that marrow is the most energy-dense natural food early humans had access to, more so than muscle meat. Now combine that with the behavior we just talked about, scavenging leftovers from predator kills, and you've got a strategy that gave early humans a massive evolutionary edge. Other animals chased speed or strength, but early Homo species, they fed their brains. Some scientists even believe that a steady diet of DHA-rich organ fats helped reshape our skulls, pushing brain growth faster than ever before seen in mammalian history. It wasn't just about surviving. It was about thinking ahead, solving problems, working together, and passing on knowledge. The humans who ate smart literally became smart. Of course, it wasn't all perfect. With raw organ consumption came risks, parasites, infections, even deadly pathogens. But the reward? A bigger brain, sharper tools, better memory, longer life, and eventually civilization. So now you know the shocking truth. The foundation of human intelligence might have come from a prehistoric snack you'd never touch today. But what else did they eat? What did a full caveman menu really look like? The caveman diet, what they really ate. When we picture prehistoric humans eating, we usually imagine one thing: meat, big, juicy, raw chunks of meat. But the real ancient human diet was way more complex and often way weirder. In reality, our ancestors were opportunistic eaters. They didn't wait for a perfect hunt. They ate what they could find, what they could scavenge, and what didn't kill them. Sure, meat played a part, but the majority of their diet wasn't ribs and steaks. It was an ever-changing buffet of plants, insects, roots, and rotting leftovers. That's right, rotting. Fermentation wasn't invented in a barrel. It started in the forest. Fruits left on the ground would ferment naturally, turning into a sort of wild prehistoric kombucha. This helped digestion and killed off harmful microbes in natural probiotic before the word even existed. And then there were insects, packed with protein, easy to find and often eaten raw. Locusts, grubs, larvae, delicacies by survival standards. Let's not forget the plants. But here's the catch. Ancient plants were not like the ones you see in supermarkets. They were smaller, tougher, and sometimes toxic. Our ancestors had to learn painfully which roots were edible, which leaves cured stomach aches, and which berries caused hallucinations or death. In fact, researchers believe that the development of memory and communication in early humans may have been accelerated by this need to remember what not to eat. A mistake wasn't just a bad taste, it was your last meal. So when early humans stumbled upon something like a fatty brain or bone marrow, it wasn't just tasty, it was safe, powerful, and rare. But as we'll see next, hunting and foraging were only part of the equation. Prehistoric humans got clever, very clever about finding, preserving, and even cooking their food, long before the discovery of fire. Think ancient humans were just chewing on raw meat in caves? Think again, long before they mastered fire, they were already figuring out clever ways to make food safer, softer, and more digestible. We often underestimate their intelligence, but the truth is, early humans were food scientists in their own right. Take marrow extraction, for example. It wasn't random bone smashing. They learned which bones cracked clean, how to wedge stones into crevices, and how to suck out every last bit of fat without wasting a drop. And let's talk about their version of cooking. Before flame, there was fermentation, drying, pounding, and soaking. These early methods broke down fibers, removed toxins, and made certain roots and nuts edible. Bitter tubers were soaked in water or left to sit in mud for days, softening them and leaching out poisons. Seeds and nuts were ground with stones, not just for easier chewing, but to unlock more calories through digestion. There's even evidence that prehistoric humans may have buried food in the ground, using cool soil as a natural fridge to slow spoilage. Imagine discovering that leaving meat in the shade kept it from stinking, and deciding that was good enough to try again. This wasn't random survival, it was pattern recognition, problem solving, and even early culinary innovation. And then there's fire. Once fire entered the picture, everything changed. It wasn't just about warmth or protection. Cooked food meant softer meat, more calories, fewer parasites, and faster digestion. Some scientists even argue that fire-cooked meals gave early humans more free time. Since they didn't need to chew for hours like chimps' time, they could use to build tools, socialize, and, well, evolve. But fire didn't appear everywhere at once. Some human groups thrived without it. So what did their diets look like? If you think all ancient humans ate the same things, think again. What you ate in Central Africa was very different from what you'd eat in Ice Age Europe or the tropical forests of Southeast Asia. Let's start with Neanderthals. These rugged, muscular humans lived in cold climates, where fruits and greens were scarce for most of the year. Their diets leaned heavily on animal fats and protein-rich meats. Mammoths, woolly rhinos, reindeer, studies of fossilized dental plaque even show burnt food particles, hinting they were cooking meat, maybe even using primitive roasting pits. But they also ate mushrooms, pine nuts, and wild legumes, proving they weren't just brute carnivores. They were foragers, too strategic and smart. In contrast, Homo erectus in Asia had access to tropical plants, freshwater fish, and edible insects. Their diets were more varied and often included turtles, shellfish, and even small monkeys. Evidence shows they cracked open turtle shells using rocks and scraped out the rich fat and organs, yes, including the brain. Meanwhile, in regions like modern-day Ethiopia and Kenya, early Homo habilis roamed grasslands full of scavenged kills and edible roots. Their menu: marrow, termites, figs, berries, and wild tubers. Some of these tubers were so tough they had to be chewed for hours or pounded flat with rocks just to be digestible. And what about high-altitude humans in regions like the Tibetan Plateau or Altai Mountains? These populations adapted to extreme cold, thin air, and minimal vegetation. They likely survived on a mix of fatty meat, stored organs, and fermented food preserved in ice or soil. Each climate, each predator, each local plant changed the game. But across all these places, one theme kept repeating. Survival wasn't just about hunting. It was about knowing your land and what it offered. Bone marrow, brains, and the big leap. Let's be honest, eating raw brains doesn't sound like a genius move. It sounds like a last resort. But what if it was actually the fastest track to becoming human? Around 2 million years ago, a shift happened. Early Homo species, especially Homo erectus, began to show signs of dramatic neurological growth. Their skulls expanded, their tools got sharper, their movements became more coordinated. It wasn't evolution at a crawl anymore, it was a leap. So, what gave them the edge? Many researchers believe the answer lies in targeted nutrition, specifically bone marrow and brains. These weren't just scraps, they were concentrated brain fuel, packed with DHA, saturated fats, cholesterol, and micronutrients crucial for neural development. Unlike tough meat or bitter roots, brains were soft, calorie-dense, and easy to digest even without fire. Perfect for children, elders, or injured tribe members who couldn't chew for long. More importantly, this fatty fuel didn't require advanced tools or strength. All you needed was a rock and some patience. Think about the survival edge this gave. While predators fought over carcasses, early humans quietly waited their turn. They learned to follow lions, hyenas, and saber-toothed cats, scavenging after the chaos. And when the beasts moved on, humans moved in, cleaning the bones of life-changing nutrients. In harsh climates or food shortages, those calories meant the difference between life and death. But more than that, they allowed for greater brain development, improved memory, and better coordination across generations. It wasn't just survival of the fittest anymore, it was survival of the smartest. Picture this: a group of early humans sits in a tight circle, huddled around a cracked skull. One carefully wedges a sharp stone into the soft seam behind the eye socket. Another holds the bone steady. When the top finally pops open, there's a pause, a silent moment. Then, slowly, they share. That moment quiet, communal, and deeply primal. May have been more than just a meal. It may have been the birth of connection. Scientists believe that eating high-fat, nutrient-rich food like brains didn't just fuel individual brains, it fueled community. Intelligence. Why? Because this kind of food wasn't hunted or hoarded. It had to be scavenged, shared, and remembered. Where did we find the skulls? What stones worked best? Which parts were safest to eat? To answer those questions, early humans had to communicate. Maybe not with full language yet, but with gestures, grunts, eye contact. And over time, those little signals became shared knowledge. Think about how food brings people together today: family dinners, feasts, holidays. That same dynamic started back then. Researchers call this social eating. It's more than just sharing calories. It's where trust forms, roles are assigned, and hierarchies emerge. The one who knew how to crack the skull, valuable. The one who remembered where the lions fed last week, even more valuable. And suddenly, intelligence became a social currency, a survival advantage in itself. But it went further. Brain fats like DHA don't just build bigger brains. They support the development of the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for empathy, planning, and social regulation. So the more our ancestors ate these rare, fatty organ meats, the better they got at thinking ahead, connecting emotionally, and working as a tribe. In other words, eating brains didn't just make us smarter, it may have made us more human. Not everything about eating brains was smart, because for all the nutrients packed into that squishy gray matter, there were also risks hiding inside, the kind that don't kill you instantly, but creep in slowly. Raw brains, whether from animals or humans, can carry deadly parasites and prions, microscopic misfolded proteins that cause diseases like Kuru and Creutzfeldt-Jakob. These diseases attack the brain, leading to tremors, madness, and eventually death. Of course, early humans didn't know the names, but they did notice patterns. In some ancient societies, especially those who practiced ritualistic cannibalism, these diseases became widespread. Archaeologists have found skulls with signs of deliberate defleshing, cut marks around the temples and jaw, but also evidence of degenerative neurological damage. Eventually, many tribes developed strict taboos around eating brains, especially human ones. These weren't just spiritual rules. They were evolutionary defenses, passed down in stories, myths, and rituals. But even animal brains had their dangers. One slip, one infected carcass scavenged too late, and you could bring illness into the tribe. That's where trial and error knowledge became critical. Some groups learned to boil brains once fire became common, or to avoid scavenging from certain species entirely. Still, for hundreds of thousands of years, the reward outweighed the risk. A single animal skull could feed multiple tribe members, deliver brain-boosting fats, and fuel generations of smarter, faster, more connected humans. But as our ancestors grew more sophisticated, farming, cooking, domesticating animals, these once precious brain snacks slowly disappeared from the daily menu. Not because they stopped being nutritious, but because we found safer, more scalable ways to nourish our minds. And yet, some indigenous cultures still preserve the old ways, eating marrow, fermenting organ meats, and remembering the food that made us who we are. In the next chapter, we bring it full circle. Would you eat the brain of an animal if it promised strength, clarity, or survival?